Throughout the decades, we've seen plenty of holiday-themed slasher films. It all started in 1978 with the release of the classic slasher film Halloween, directed by John Carpenter. After that, filmmakers all over Hollywood wanted to ape Halloween style and hopefully capture some of its success. So throughout the 80s and most of the 90s, we got films with a holiday theme. Slasher films like Friday the 13th, April Fool's Day, and even New Year's Evil, which took place on, obviously, New Year's Eve. But there's one holiday-themed slasher pick that stands above the rest. One that is filled with just so much passion and has been deemed a classic by horror fans all over the world. And of course, it takes place on Valentine's Day. I am not talking about the 2001 film Valentine, directed by Jamie Blanks. I'm talking about the 1981 film My Bloody Valentine. What, you thought Valentine from 2001 could possibly be considered one of the best slasher picks ever made? No. There's a reason why Quentin Tarantino calls My Bloody Valentine his favorite slasher. It's creative, it's entertaining, it's enjoyable. This film, Valentine, came out a few years after Scream. It was during a time period where, again, Hollywood wanted to copy something that was successful. Scream came out in 1996, and so filmmakers like Jamie Blanks released films like Urban Legend, which, by the way, Jamie Blanks also directed Urban Legend.
Will you dance with me? Dance with me? Dance with me? Dance with me?
Remember the kid everybody ignored on Valentine's Day?
Loser.
Well, he remembers you.
God, we were so horrible to that kid.
What do you think happened to him?
The worst thing about Valentine is that it is just so bland. It's more bland than your average CW drama, something like Dawson's Creek or The OC. Like, this film doesn't know what to do with its characters. Like Scream, it has a cast of attractable young leads, among them being Denise Richards, aka the most embarrassing Bond girl ever put to celluloid. I mean, remember when she was supposed to be a nuclear physicist and she wore short shorts in her first scene? I mean, that was just ludicrous. But Valentine, there's a difference between films like Scream and Valentine. Scream was clever, it had witty dialogue, it had characters that you could root for. The lead, Sidney Prescott, had a tragic backstory, and you sympathize with the character completely. There's no one to sympathize with in Valentine, and this is going to be another one of my brief reviews because there's not really much to say about this movie except that I didn't feel the love while watching this movie. In fact, I just felt miserable afterwards. I want to start with the opening scene because the opening scene is your classic slasher scenario. You have this stereotypical nerd who is getting bullied by his peers. It takes place at a junior high dance, and it harkens back to films like Slaughter High, where you'd have this really nerdy outcast who, couldn't catch a break with the popular kids. And the opening titles of this movie are very choppily edited because there's a lot of fade outs. Quick shots will often flash on screen, and it's just very jumbled. And it's also just so ludicrous because, I mean, for one, you flash forward and you realize that these characters are holding on to something very insignificant that happened to them in the past. I mean, come on. There was like one awkward night in junior high where, they picked on the nerdy kid and ended up sending him to military school or whatever. I mean, come on. It's insane. And it doesn't give you any red herrings whatsoever. There's no mystery to this film because the opening scene tells us who the killer is. And I also want to talk about, the scene that follows, once it flashes forward, like I believe 13 years, because it just is a complete rip-off of the opening scene from Scream. You have Katherine Heigl, an attractive young actress who appears in the first 12 minutes of the movie. When we first meet her, she is on a blind date with this very awkward gentleman who speaks of himself like in the first person. Like, he says, "Ooh, Jason thinks you're very attractive. Jason loves the way you look in that dress." And the humor in this movie is just so forced, and this opening scene is just a terrific example of that. But Katherine Heigl, she is a medical student. She goes to this lab where she's about to perform an autopsy, which, by the way, I don't think she wears very appropriate dress wear in this scene because she's wearing like a a tight or brown tank top, and she doesn't look like she's about to perform an autopsy. She looks as if she's about to appear in a J.C. Penney catalog. But she's about to perform this autopsy, but she hears a noise in the hallway. She leaves. Of course, the only person there is another college student. She comes back to the operating room. There's another body on the table, but it's not the corpse she was about to perform an autopsy on. It's the killer of this movie. And by the way, terrible writing. Did the killer just know that she was going to come back to the operating room, and he thought to himself, I should just position myself on the table, cover myself with this rag, and surprise her at the last minute? Like, it's completely ludicrous. But she ends up getting chased, and she tries to hide in one of those like black body bags, and this room is filled with body bags, and the killer just starts stabbing each one until he finds the correct one. He unzips it. She's inside there. She looks up at him, and he slits her throat. It's a completely nonsensical opening. There are just so many plot holes, so many things don't make sense about it, but just the first 15 minutes of this movie are just a prime example of why this film is just so utterly stupid.
Hello? Stay away from me.
The rest of the film, the characters are incredibly shallow. They're unlikable. They are portrayed by actors who, we've seen do good things before. Like Marley Shelton in the movie. Marley Shelton plays one of the leads in this movie, aka Wendy Peppercorn from The Sandlot. And, she was in Grindhouse. She's been in some good things. Denise Richards, I don't really know about her, but all the characters in this movie are incredibly shallow. And they try to give you some red herrings, like, each of these girls has a handsome, hunky boyfriend, and the script tries to, keep you guessing, tries to make you think, maybe this guy is the killer because he's acting really strange, he's acting kind of suspicious. But I would say the only redeeming thing about Valentine is that it features a couple of semi-creative kill sequences. I mean, they're nothing amazing. Like, there's a sequence inside an art museum where a woman is walking through this gallery, and the killer shoots her with like 3 arrows. Like, he has a bow, and he puts 3 arrows in her, and she falls to her death. She lands in a dumpster. And that was probably my favorite kill of the film, but this film was also kind of restrained in its gore. Like, there's another scene where the killer has this woman cornered. He shoves her into this glass door. The glass shatters, and like there's this very sharp piece of glass like protruding like from the floor, and he basically like forces her head down on this piece of glass, and it's not really that graphic. And this movie is just so sloppily written, and like I mentioned earlier, none of the characters are likable. It was yet another attempt to rip off Scream and capture some of that film success, and the reveal of the killer in this movie is so lame. And this movie has been out for like almost 20 years, so of course I'm going to spoil the ending. I mean, who cares? So Marley Shelton has been seeing this guy throughout the entire movie. His name is Adam. He's this good-looking, hunky dude who apparently used to have a drinking problem, but it gets to the end of the movie where they're at this Valentine's Day party, in which, by the way, real quick, Denise Richards' death in this movie is so over the top because she's in this hot tub. The killer closes a lid in the hot tub, and then he starts like sticking a drill through the glass, and it's just so unnecessarily over the top. But anyway, back to the ending. So Wendy Peppercorn, her boyfriend has been drinking, and he's acting really strange. He's acting really intense. He's coming on to her, and it gets to the point where it's just the two of them left inside this huge, luxurious mansion. And, she's trying to fend him off. She needs him in the balls at one point. But the asshole, just acts like this, slobbering idiot. And eventually she comes across the killer. But the killer turns out to be one of her best friends. One of the lead characters in this movie. I mean, that's what we're meant to believe, because they take the mask off in this dramatic fashion, and oh my god, it was actually one of her best friends. The fat girl. I mean, she used to be fat, not really, but So the last sequence in this movie, Wendy Peppercorn is in her boyfriend's arms. He's coddling her. He's like, some kids, they just can't live with the trauma. They just can't live they can't live with all the bad things that happened to them. I mean, like I said earlier, God, you kids were in junior high. It was one night. You let it ruin like your whole lives. Just so freaking shallow. Like, these are characters from the freaking Jersey Shore or something. But anyway, so he's telling her all these, bullshit things. And, oh, I forgot to mention, the killer had this distinct physical feature where his nose would bleed. Like, there'd be drops of blood coming out of the nose hole in the mask. But we see a close-up of Wendy Peppercorn's face. A drop of blood falls on her cheek. The camera slowly tilts up. And turns out her boyfriend was the nerdy kid at the beginning of the movie that was bullied. So the ending things are just so damn clever, but not really, because if you show who your killer is at the beginning of the movie, then, where's the mystery? Like, even if you try to pass the killer off as someone else, that's no fun to watch. Do we watch mysteries? Like, do we want to watch a mystery in which the killer is revealed in the very first scene? Like, is that something that we want? I mean, granted, Halloween, established that Michael Myers was the killer, but that wasn't really a mystery. That was a straightforward slasher pick. This film tries to be more of a mystery, like Scream, and it just fails on almost every single level. Guys, Valentine is, like I said, a lazily written ripoff, and I'm not feeling the love tonight. Really, if you want to see a better Valentine-themed horror movie, watch My Bloody Valentine from 1981, or even its remake, which came out in 2006, I believe. Much, much better movies. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me in my quick discussion of the film Valentine from 2001. It was a lot of fun talking about this film with you guys. We have a ton of new videos lined up. I have a special video in a couple of weeks where I will be talking about the 5 scariest Nickelodeon episodes that scared the bejesus out of me as a kid. I'm very excited about that. I even have an episode of Rugrats in there, but I'm excited to talk about that. Thank you again, guys. I hope you have a great night. I mean, have a scary night.